The emergency signal came through during the night shift at the Galactic Council headquarters. It was a desperate cry for help from the Velen people, a peaceful species living on the water planet called Aquaria Prime. Their voices cracked with fear as they begged for someone, anyone, to save them from the Ravagers. The Ravagers were known across the galaxy as destroyers. They traveled from world to world, taking everything they wanted and leaving nothing behind. They had wiped out 17 civilizations already, and now they had come for the Velens. Ambassador Kethra called an emergency meeting. The council chamber filled quickly with representatives from dozens of alien species. They came in all shapes and sizes. Some walked, some floated, some crawled. They gathered around the central platform and listened to the recordings from Aquaria Prime. The sounds were horrible. Screams echoed through the speakers. Buildings collapsed. Children cried for their parents. The Velens were dying, and they were asking the galaxy for help. The debate started immediately. One ambassador said they could not interfere because of the old laws. Another said the Velens were not official members of the council. A third worried about the cost of sending military ships. They talked and talked while the distress signals kept coming. Days passed. The calls from Aquaria Prime grew weaker. Then one morning they stopped completely. The chamber went quiet. Everyone knew what the silence meant. In the back of the room, human ambassador Jin Wu sat listening. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair so tight his knuckles turned white. Humans had only joined the Galactic Council 5 years ago. The other species still treated them like dangerous children who did not understand how civilized people behaved. Earth was what the galaxy called a death world. It had extreme gravity that crushed most aliens who visited. The weather killed without warning. The animals hunted in packs and showed no mercy. Even the plants could be deadly. And humans had survived it all. They had climbed to the top of their planet's food chain through sheer determination and violence when necessary. The other species feared Earth and the creatures it produced. They watched humans carefully, always worried about what these dangerous newcomers might do. Jinwoo could not sit still any longer. He stood and walked out of the chamber. The other ambassadors barely noticed. In his private office, he sent an unauthorized message directly to Earth. It contained all the recordings from Aquaria Prime and 3 simple words at the end. They need us. On Earth, Fleet Admiral Haya Jin received the transmission in her office at the Lunar Command Center. She was a veteran of Earth's last Great War, a conflict that had nearly destroyed the planet before humanity finally learned to work together. She had seen enough death to last a lifetime, but she had also learned that sometimes the only way to stop evil was to fight it. She listened to the Velen screams once. That was enough. She pressed the emergency alert button on her desk. Within an hour, the United Defense Fleet began preparing for deployment. The massive shipyards orbiting the moon burst into activity. Crews rushed to their stations. Weapons systems powered up. Supply ships loaded ammunition and medical supplies. The fleet was impressive. The flagship, UDS Indomitable, was a monster of a ship built with Earth technology. Unlike the elegant vessels other species flew, human ships looked brutal and functional. They had thick armor plating designed to withstand ocean pressure. Their weapons were kinetic, railguns and missiles that the civilized galaxy considered primitive and barbaric. Captain Taemin commanded one of the heavy cruisers, Soul's Fury. He had served in the fleet for 15 years and knew every bolt and wire in his ship. He stood on the bridge watching his crew prepare for battle. They moved with practiced efficiency, each person knowing their job perfectly. Wing Commander Nari led the fighter squadrons. She was the best pilot in the fleet, with reflexes so fast they seemed impossible. Her fighters were small, fast, and heavily armed. They looked like angry wasps compared to the graceful alien ships. Chief Medical Officer Young Ho supervised the loading of the hospital ships. He knew they would need every bed and every drop of medicine they could carry. Experience had taught him that rescue missions always cost blood. As the fleet assembled, Galactic Council ships watched from a safe distance. They sent official warnings telling the humans to stand down. This was not Earth's problem, they said. Humanity would be violating 17 different protocols. There would be consequences. Admiral He Jin sat in her command chair aboard the Indomitable. She read the warnings and deleted them. Then she opened a channel to the entire fleet. "Everyone knows why we are here," she said. Her voice was calm but hard as steel. "The Velens called for help. The galaxy debated while they died. We are going to Aquaria Prime. We are going to save whoever is left. And we are going to show the Ravagers what happens when they hurt innocent people." She paused and looked at the faces on her screen. Thousands of crew members across dozens of ships. They all wore the same expression. They were ready. "The Council says this is not our fight," He Jin continued. "They are wrong. Someone sent an SOS. That makes it our fight. That is what humans do. We answer when others cry for help." She gave the order. The fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving Earth behind. The Galactic Council kept sending warnings. Admiral He Jin ignored every single one. In the council chamber, Jin Woo watched the fleet disappear on the tracking screens. Another ambassador approached him, a tall, insect-like creature named Vixtar. "Your species will regret this," Vixtar said. "You are too violent, too unpredictable." Jin Woo turned to face him. "The Velens sent an SOS. We answered. If that makes us violent, then the galaxy needs more violence and less debate." He walked away, leaving the other ambassadors to their comfortable chairs and empty words. The human fleet raced through space toward Aquaria Prime. They did not know what they would find there. They did not know if any Velens still lived. But they knew one thing with absolute certainty. They would make the Ravagers pay for every life taken, every home destroyed, every unanswered cry for help. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you ignored a distress call and humans found out about it. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light speed at the edge of the Aquaria system. What they saw made even the veterans go silent. Aquaria Prime had once been beautiful. The planet was covered in deep blue oceans with underwater cities that glowed like jewels. Now it looked sick. A massive organic mass covered half the planet like a disease. Thousands of Ravager bioships floated in orbit, pulsing with sickly light as they fed on the world below. Sensor Officer Bo-Ra sat at her station aboard the Indomitable, her fingers flying across the controls, her screen filled with data, and none of it was good. "Admiral," she said quietly, "I am detecting debris from over 300 civilian ships. All the orbital stations are destroyed. I am picking up faint life signs from the underwater cities, but they are very weak." Admiral He Jin studied the tactical display. The Ravager fleet was enormous. Their bioships were alive, grown rather than built. Each one was the size of a small city and covered in organic weapons that could tear through normal ship armor. "How many survivors?" He Jin asked. Bo-Ra worked her controls, trying to get a clear reading through all the interference. "Estimated 90 to 100,000, Admiral, maybe less. They are scattered across the deepest cities." The bridge crew did the math in their heads. The Velens had numbered over 4 million before the attack. Now, barely 2% remained alive. Captain Taemin's voice came through the communication system from Seoul's Fury. "Admiral, the Ravagers are forming up. They know we are here." On the main screen, the Ravager ships began moving. 300 of them created a wall between the human fleet and the planet. They were huge, intimidating, and had never been defeated in battle. A message came through in broken galactic standard language. The translation appeared on the screens. "Leave now. This harvest belongs to us. Your ships are small. Your numbers are few. You will die here." Admiral He-jin looked at the message for a moment. Then she opened a channel to Captain Taemin. "Captain, you have permission to respond." Taemin smiled. He had been waiting for this. He activated the broadcast system to send his message to the entire Ravager fleet. "We are humanity from planet Earth," he said, speaking clearly in perfect galactic standard. "Our world has crushing oceans, deadly storms, and predators that hunt in packs. We survived all of it. We grew strong from it. You attacked peaceful people who asked for help. The galaxy ignored them. We did not. You have one chance. Leave this system now, or learn why they call our home a death world." The Ravagers responded with weapons fire. "All ships, battle stations," Admiral He-jin ordered. "Fighter wings, launch now!" Wing Commander Nari was already in her cockpit. She had been waiting for this moment since the fleet left Earth. Her fighter launched from the Indomitable's hangar, along with 39 others in her squadron. Behind them, 11 more squadrons poured out from the other ships. The human fighters were different from anything the galaxy normally used. They were heavily armored, built to survive in Earth's violent atmosphere. They carried kinetic weapons, actual physical bullets and missiles, instead of the energy weapons most species preferred. Nari led her squadron straight at the Ravager line. The bioships fired biological projectiles that could melt through normal ship armor, but human fighters were built to withstand re-entry into Earth's atmosphere at thousands of degrees. The Ravager weapons splashed off their shields. "All wings, focus fire on their weapon nodes," Nari ordered. "Hit them hard and fast." The fighters dove and weaved through the Ravager formation. Their railguns fired rounds at incredible speed, punching through the organic armor. The Ravagers had regeneration abilities, healing damage almost as fast as it was dealt. But they had never faced weapons like this. Solid metal rounds traveling so fast, they carried the impact of small explosions. Captain Taemin brought his cruiser wing into the fight using a maneuver the fleet called Earth's Gambit. Instead of keeping a safe distance like most species did, the human ships flew straight into the enemy formation at close range. The Ravagers were confused. No one attacked them this way. It was suicide. But the humans kept coming, their thick armor absorbing hits that would destroy normal ships. At point-blank range, they opened fire with everything they had. Sol's Fury shook as its main railguns fired. The heavy rounds tore through 3 Ravager ships in a single volley. Taemin gripped his command chair as his ship took return fire. "Shield holding at 60%, his tactical officer reported. "Hull integrity good." "Keep firing," Taemin ordered. "Show them what Earth-built ships can do." Aboard the Indomitable, Admiral He-jin watched the battle unfold. The Ravagers were tough and numerous, but they were unprepared for human tactics. They had grown used to enemies who fought cautiously from a distance. Humans fought like the predators from their home world. Aggressive, relentless, and willing to take damage to deliver killing blows. "All ships, push forward," He-jin commanded. "We need to clear a path to the planet. Marines, prepare for deployment." Commander Dong-hyun stood in the drop bay with 2,000 Marines. They wore powered armor designed to operate in Earth's crushing gravity. The suits were bulky and brutal-looking, covered in weapon mounts and reinforced plating. "Listen up," Dong-hyun shouted to his troops. "We are going down to those underwater cities. The Velans are dying down there while we speak. Our job is to get them out. The Ravagers will try to stop us. Do not let them. Remember your training. Remember why we are here." The Marines checked their weapons and prepared their gear. They knew what was coming. Half of them might not make it to the surface. That was the reality of a drop assault through enemy territory. The drop pods launched from the fleet, small capsules containing 5 Marines each. They shot through space toward the planet, burning through the Ravager orbital mass. The bioships tried to intercept them, but the human fighters and capital ships provided covering fire. Commander Dong-hyun's pod hit the Ravager organic barrier. The pod's armor glowed red-hot as it burned through layer after layer of living tissue. Ravager defense organisms tried to grab the pod, but it was moving too fast. Then they were through. The pod plunged toward the ocean surface. Inside, Dong-hyun and his squad braced for impact. The pod hit the water at incredible speed and kept going, diving deep toward the Velen cities below. All around them, other pods made the same desperate descent. Some were destroyed by Ravager fire, others made it through. The survivors crashed into the ocean and began their approach to the cities. Inside the cities, the Velens heard the sounds of the pods hitting the water. They had given up hope days ago when the Council abandoned them. Now something was coming. They did not know if it was salvation or more death. The first Marine pod landed near the largest city. The doors blew open and 5 armored figures stepped out into the alien ocean. Commander Dong-hyun activated his helmet lights and looked around. What he saw made his blood run cold. The Ravagers had set up harvest stations throughout the city. Captured Velens were trapped in feeding tubes, their life force being drained away. Bodies floated in the water. The survivors huddled in sealed sections, waiting to die. "All squads, this is Commander Dong-hyun," he broadcast to the Marine force. "We have civilians in immediate danger. I am authorizing weapons free. No mercy for the enemy. Move fast and save everyone you can." The Marines spread out through the underwater city. The battle for Aquaria Prime had truly begun. The underwater battle was unlike anything the Ravagers had ever experienced. They were space predators, designed to fight in the void and on land. They had never needed to adapt to deep ocean combat. The human Marines had trained for exactly this kind of environment. Commander Dong-hyun moved through the Velen city with his squad close behind. His powered armor handled the water pressure easily. On Earth, Marines trained in oceans that could crush submarines. This alien sea was actually easier than home. They found the first harvest station in what had been a Velen school. The sight made Dong-hyun's jaw clench. Dozens of young Velens were trapped in organic tubes, their bodies limp as the Ravagers drained their life energy. Ravager workers crawled over the machinery, tending to their horrible crop. "Contact front!" one of his Marines shouted. The Ravagers turned toward the intruders. They were large creatures, covered in thick chitin armor with multiple limbs ending in sharp claws. They screeched and charged at the Marines. Dong-hyun raised his rifle and fired. The underwater weapon bucked in his hands as it sent rounds downrange. The bullets were specially designed to maintain their speed and power even in water. They punched through the Ravager's armor like it was paper. His squad opened fire together. The confined space of the city corridor became a killing zone. Ravagers fell one after another, their regeneration abilities overwhelmed by the sheer volume of fire. "Clear the room and free those civilians," Dong-hyun ordered. The Marines moved fast. They cut through the feeding tubes carefully, pulling unconscious Velens free. One Marine activated the emergency beacon that would guide rescue shuttles to their location. Across the city, similar scenes played out. Squad leader Yoon-ji led her team through a residential section. They found Velen families barricaded inside their homes, terrified and starving. When Yoon-ji's armored figure appeared at their door, the Velens screamed in fear. Yoon-ji activated her translator and spoke as gently as she could through the mechanical voice. "We are from Earth. We heard your distress call. We are here to help. Stay close to us, and we will get you to safety." An elderly Velen named Rilva stared at the armored giant. She had listened to the council debates, heard how they described humans as violent and dangerous. Now one of these frightening creatures was offering to save her. "The council abandoned us," Rilva said, her voice breaking. "They said helping us was too complicated." Yoon-ji felt anger rise in her chest, but she kept her voice calm. "We are not the council. We are human. When someone calls for help, we answer. Always." She led the Velen families toward the evacuation point, her squad forming a protective ring around them. When Ravager hunters appeared, the Marines cut them down without hesitation. Up in orbit, the space battle continued to rage. Admiral He-jin studied the tactical display with cold calculation. The Ravagers were adapting to human tactics, trying to surround the fleet and overwhelm them with numbers. "We are outnumbered 20-1, Sensor Officer Bora reported. "They are trying to box us in." He-jin nodded. She had expected this. "All ships, execute Protocol Omega." Captain Tae-min received the order aboard Seoul's Fury and smiled grimly. Protocol Omega was a desperate tactic, one that only worked because human ships were built to withstand punishment that would destroy normal vessels. "Vent all coolant systems," he ordered. "Overload the reactor by 30%. His crew looked at him with wide eyes but followed orders. They trusted their captain completely. The human ships deliberately damaged their own cooling systems. Superheated plasma vented from their hulls as they maneuvered through the Ravager fleet. The bioships, evolved to absorb energy attacks as food, moved closer to feed on the thermal radiation. It was a trap. The plasma was too hot, too intense. The Ravager ships that tried to absorb it cooked from the inside. Their organic systems could not handle the extreme temperatures. They began to die, their biological processes failing. "Now," He-jin ordered, "all ships full offensive." The human fleet unleashed everything. Railguns fired at maximum rate. Missiles streaked through space. Nuclear warheads detonated among the confused Ravager formations. The galaxy considered nuclear weapons barbaric and banned them centuries ago. Humans had never signed that ban. Wing Commander Nari's fighters exploited the chaos. Her squadron dove through the Ravager fleet, targeting their command nodes with precision strikes. When her wingman took critical damage, she watched him do something that horrified the galactic observers watching from a distance. Instead of ejecting to safety, the pilot deliberately crashed his fighter into a Ravager command ship. The fighter's remaining missiles detonated on impact, destroying the bioship completely. "What are they doing?" a Chitauri observer broadcast in shock. "They are killing themselves." But it was not suicide. It was tactical thinking. The disabled fighter could not make it back to the fleet anyway. The pilot chose to make his death count for something. It was a very human way to fight. Down on the planet, Chief Medical Officer Young-ho's hospital ships began rescue operations. Shuttles flew through the Ravager formations, dodging weapons fire to reach the surface. The pilots were Earth-trained, veterans of flying through hurricanes and electrical storms. The Ravager attacks were dangerous but not impossible to avoid. Young-ho himself descended in the first shuttle. When it landed near Commander Dong-hyun's position, he rushed out with his medical team. They set up a field hospital inside a protected Velen building. The wounded came in waves, Velens suffering from energy draining, physical injuries, and psychological trauma. Young-ho worked frantically, adapting his Earth-based medical knowledge to alien physiology. He had studied Velen biology during the trip, memorizing everything he could. A dying Velen female was brought to him. She had been in a feeding tube for days and was barely alive. Young-ho worked on her with steady hands, using medicines and techniques that should not work on alien biology, but somehow did. Humans had learned to be creative with medical care through centuries of war and disaster. The Velen's eyes opened. She looked at Young-ho with confusion and fear. "Why?" she whispered through the translator. "Why do strangers fight for us? We are nothing to you." Young-ho continued treating her wounds as he answered. "On Earth we have a saying, when you hear someone calling for help, you answer. It does not matter who they are. It does not matter if you know them. You just answer. That is what makes us human." The Velen began to cry. Young-ho gently patted her hand and moved to the next patient. Outside the medical area, the Marines held a defensive perimeter. The Ravagers had realized that the humans were evacuating survivors and sent wave after wave of ground forces to stop them. Commander Dong-hyun stood at the front line, his rifle firing steadily. Beside him, Marines fought with the same determination. They had trained for this. They had prepared for worse. Earth had made them tough enough to handle anything. "Hold the line!" Dong Hyun shouted. "Every minute we hold is another shuttle full of survivors reaching safety." The Marines held. They did not retreat. They did not break. They were human, and humans did not abandon people who needed help. Above them, Admiral Hae-jin watched the evacuation numbers climb. 30,000 evacuated. 40,000, 50,000. Each number represented lives saved, families reunited, and hope restored. But the cost was high. 7 human ships had been destroyed. Thousands of crew members were dead. Hundreds of Marines would never leave Aquaria Prime. Hae-jin felt the weight of every loss. But she also knew it was worth it. The Velans had called for help. Humanity had answered. That was all that mattered. Lieutenant Sang-woo worked frantically in the captured Ravager command node. His team had boarded one of the bioships during the battle and fought their way to its control center. Now he was downloading every piece of data he could find. What he discovered made his hands shake with excitement and anger. "Commander Dong Hyun, this is Sang-woo. You need to hear this." Dong Hyun was still on the planet's surface, coordinating the final evacuations. "What did you find, Lieutenant?" "The coordinates to their spawning world, sir. 3 planets where they breed and store all the genetic information they have stolen from conquered species. It is all here." There was silence on the communication line. Then Dong Hyun spoke carefully. "Send that data to Admiral Hae-jin immediately. She needs to make this decision." Aboard the Indomitable, Admiral Hae-jin studied the new information on her display. The coordinates showed 3 Ravager breeding planets hidden inside a dark nebula. For centuries, the Galactic Council had searched for these locations, hoping to find them and negotiate. The Ravagers had kept them secret, knowing their spawning grounds were their only weakness. She called a command meeting with her senior officers. Their faces appeared on her screen, all showing signs of the brutal battle they had just fought. "We have extracted 93,000 Velan survivors," Captain Taemin reported first. "Our casualties are 7 ships destroyed, 5 heavily damaged, and 7,000 personnel killed in action." The numbers hung in the air. 7,000 dead to save 93,000. By Earth standards, an acceptable trade. By galactic standards, horrifying losses. "The Velans numbered over 4 million before the attack," Wing Commander Nari said quietly. 4 million dead while the Council debated. Admiral Hae-jin looked at the coordinates on her screen. "We accomplished our mission. We saved everyone we could. Technically, our orders were just to rescue survivors. We should return to Earth and let diplomats handle the rest." Commander Dong Hyun leaned forward on his screen. "Technically, yes. But the Velans did not just call for rescue, Admiral. They called for justice. The Ravagers will just do this again to someone else. Another peaceful species will die while the Council debates." Hae-jin nodded slowly. She had already made her decision, but she wanted her officers to agree. The Council will be furious. They will call it an act of war. They might even expel humanity. "Then they expel us," Captain Taemin said firmly. "But at least the Ravagers will learn that actions have consequences, that some species fight back." Hae-jin activated the fleet-wide communication system. Every sailor, marine, and pilot heard her voice. "We came to Aquaria Prime to answer a distress call. We saved 93,000 lives. Our mission is complete. We could go home now as heroes, but I am giving you all a choice." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We have found the Ravager spawning grounds. We can strike at their heart and end this threat for good, or we can follow orders and let someone else deal with it later. I am taking my ship to those coordinates. Any vessel that wants to return to Earth has permission to leave. No judgment, no shame." She waited. 1 minute passed. Then 2. Not a single ship broke formation. "All ships report ready, Admiral," Bora said with pride in her voice. "The fleet will follow you." Back at the Galactic Council, Ambassador Jin Woo stood before an angry chamber. Representatives from dozens of species shouted accusations at him. Your species has violated the non-aggression pact. You escalated a regional conflict into a war. Humanity is too dangerous to remain in the council. Jin Woo stood calmly and waited for them to finish. When the chamber finally quieted, he spoke. We violated your pact to save 93,000 lives. We did not escalate anything. The Ravagers escalated when they slaughtered 4 million civilians while you debated protocol. And yes, humanity is dangerous. We are very dangerous to predators, slavers, and anyone who thinks the weak exist only to be consumed. Council leader Kethra hissed at him. You cannot attack the Ravager homeworld. It would set a precedent of total warfare. Jin Woo's expression turned cold. The precedent was set when you ignored a distress call and let millions die. We are just writing the next chapter, the one where bullies learn to be afraid. He sent a message to Admiral He Jin. The Council threatens sanctions and expulsion. Proceed anyway. Her response came back quickly. Understood. See you when this is done. The human fleet arrived at the Dark Nebula. Sensors showed 3 planets deep inside, each covered in Ravager breeding facilities. The defense fleet was massive, 5,000 bioships, the largest concentration of Ravager forces ever assembled. They know we are coming, Captain Taman observed. They are protecting their future. Then we will take their future away. Admiral Hai Jin said simply. All ships, weapons free. This ends today. The battle was apocalyptic. The Ravagers fought with desperate fury, throwing everything they had at the human fleet. But the humans fought with something the Ravagers did not understand: righteous anger. Wing Commander Nari led her fighters through impossible odds. Her pilots sang old Earth war songs as they marked targets for the capital ships. When fighters were damaged beyond repair, the pilots made them count, crashing into breeding stations and command centers. Captain Taman used the nebula's radiation as cover. Sol's fury would disappear into the clouds, then emerge at point-blank range to unleash devastating attacks. The Ravagers could not track them in the dense gas. The humans, trained to navigate Earth's worst weather, handled it easily. Commander Dong-hyun's Marines boarded the largest breeding station. They fought through corridors made of living tissue, killing Ravager defenders with cold efficiency. They reached the genetic repository where the Ravagers stored stolen knowledge from 17 extinct civilizations. Lieutenant Sang-woo looked at the massive organic computer. We could take this, the technology and science from all those lost species. Dong-hyun stared at the pulsing walls, grown from the suffering of billions. He thought about the Velans in the feeding tubes. The 4 million dead. All the civilizations destroyed to build this place. No, he said firmly. Some things should stay dead. Plant the charges. Deep inside the central breeding planet, something ancient awoke. The Prime Queen was enormous, a creature the size of a mountain that had lived for thousands of years. She broadcasted a psychic message that every species could understand. You cannot destroy us. We are eternal. We are hunger. We are survival. Admiral He Jin heard the message on her bridge. She thought about Earth, a planet that had tried to kill humanity every single day. Predators, disease, natural disasters. Earth had thrown everything at her species, and humans were still here. We are humanity, she broadcasted back. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day, and we survived. You are not eternal. You are just another predator. And on Earth, we learned long ago how to deal with predators. She gave the order. Every human ship fired at once. The breeding planets cracked. Explosions lit up the nebula. The Ravager fleet, watching their future burn, scattered in panic. For the first time in their history, they ran away. The human fleet did not pursue. They had made their point. As the fires died, Admiral Hyajin looked at the tactical display. 42 ships remained operational from the original 60, thousands more dead, but the job was done. "Set course for Aquaria Prime," she ordered. "Let us go tell the Velens it is over." The human fleet returned to Aquaria Prime, looking like it had been through hell. 42 ships out of the original 60 remained operational. Burn marks covered their hulls. Some had gaping holes in their armor, but they were still flying, still fighting, still human. The Velen survivors gathered in the restored sections of their underwater cities. Elder Rilva stood before a communication screen that showed Admiral Hyajin's face. Around Rilva, 93,000 Velens waited to hear what the human would say. "The Ravager breeding grounds are destroyed," Hyajin said simply. "Their fleet is scattered. They will not bother you again. They will not bother anyone again for a very long time." Rilva felt tears running down her face. "You lost so much to save us. Thousands of your people died for strangers. We do not understand humans. We are not sure we are supposed to. But we will never forget what you did." Hyajin's expression softened slightly. "You called for help. We answered. That is all there is to it." Over the following weeks, human personnel stayed on Aquaria Prime to help with reconstruction. Chief Medical Officer Young Ho set up a teaching hospital, training Velen doctors in emergency medicine. The Velens were healers by nature, not warriors. They had never needed to treat battlefield injuries before. "Press here to stop the bleeding," Young Ho explained to a group of Velen medical students. "Speed is more important than perfection in trauma care. Save the life first, heal properly later." The Velen doctors watched in amazement as Young Ho demonstrated techniques developed from centuries of Earth's wars and disasters. It was brutal, practical medicine that went against everything they had learned. But it worked. Squad leader Yunji worked with Velen security forces, teaching them basic defense tactics. The peaceful species had never needed weapons before. Now they understood they lived in a dangerous galaxy. "Your world is underwater," Yunji explained to her students. "That is your advantage. Use it. Fight where you are strong and the enemy is weak. Make them come to you." The Velens practiced with weapons that felt foreign in their hands. But they learned. They had to. The galaxy had shown them that peace alone was not enough to survive. Commander Dong Hyun stood in a memorial garden the Velens had created. They had planted a section specifically for the human dead. 7,000 names were carved into stone markers. Dong Hyun placed a small oak sapling from Earth in the center. "For the 4 million, he said quietly, thinking of the Velens who had died before help arrived. At the Galactic Council, chaos ruled. The chamber was in constant session, with representatives shouting at each other day and night. Some species demanded humanity's immediate expulsion. Others, watching what had happened, began to reconsider their positions. Finally, a new voice cut through the noise. Elder Rilva had been granted emergency council membership after her species' tragedy. She spoke for the first time. "You debate what to do about humanity while sitting safe in comfortable chairs. I watched humans die to save my people. I watched them go beyond their orders, beyond reason, to deliver justice. Are they violent? Yes. Are they dangerous? Absolutely." She paused and looked around the chamber. "But I ask you this. Who would you want answering your distress call? The species that debate for days? Or the species that show up ready to fight?" The chamber went completely silent. No one had an answer. Ambassador Jin Woo received the council's decision later that day. Humanity was formally censured for protocol violations. They would face economic sanctions for 3 months, but that was all. No expulsion, no military action. Privately, several species began opening diplomatic channels with Earth. They wanted defense treaties, trade agreements. Some even asked for human military advisors to train their forces. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted. Everyone could feel it. News of the Battle of Aquaria Prime spread across every galactic network. The story grew with each retelling. The Deathworlders who answered an ignored distress call. The fleet that fought against impossible odds. The species that showed the galaxy what justice looked like. In the outer systems, pirate groups that had terrorized civilians for decades suddenly became very careful. They started checking if their targets had any connection to Earth. If there was even a small chance of human retaliation, they looked for easier prey. The Ravagers, what remained of them, retreated to the darkest corners of space. They had learned fear for the first time in their existence. A new phrase entered galactic standard language. Call the humans. Pirates used it as a threat. Civilians used it as hope. Diplomats used it as a warning. Everyone understood what it meant. The damaged human fleet finally returned to Earth orbit 3 months after they had left. They received a hero's welcome that could be seen from space. Every city on the planet celebrated. But the returning soldiers were quiet. They had seen too much death to feel like celebrating. Admiral He-Jin addressed her fleet one last time before they disbanded. We did not ask permission. We did not wait for approval. We heard people calling for help and we answered. Some will call us violent. Some will call us dangerous. Let them. On Earth we have another word for what we did. We call it necessary. The crew cheered, but Hae-Jin could see the sadness in their eyes. They had won, but victory always had a cost. Wing Commander Nari chose not to return home. She stayed on Aquaria Prime as part of a permanent defense force. Someone needs to teach them to fight like humans, she explained when asked why. The galaxy is dangerous. They need to be ready next time. Captain Taemin was promoted to Vice Admiral. His new assignment was building a rapid response fleet that could reach any distress call in the galaxy within days. Next time someone sends an SOS, he told reporters, we will be ready even faster. Commander Dong-hyun returned to Earth and immediately went back to training new Marines. He added new sections to the training program about fighting for others, not just for Earth. Remember why we fight, he told each new class. Not for glory, not for conquest. We fight so others do not have to die waiting for someone to care. Chief Medical Officer Young-ho established a medical exchange program. Galactic doctors came to Earth to learn crisis medicine. Most were horrified by the conditions humans regularly survived, all left with new respect for Earth's resilience. 6 months after the battle, Ambassador Jin Woo attended a memorial ceremony on Aquaria Prime. The Velans had built a massive monument in their capital city. It showed a human marine in powered armor carrying a Velan child to safety. The inscription was written in both languages. They answered. Elder Rilva approached Jin Woo as the ceremony ended. Your people sacrifice so much for strangers. How can we ever repay such a debt? Jin Woo shook his head. You do not repay it. You pass it on. Next time someone needs help, you answer. You teach others to answer. That is how you honor those who died. Rilva understood. The Velans would remember this lesson. As the ceremony concluded, a new distress signal reached the Galactic Council networks. A different species in a different sector was calling for help. The message was desperate, frightened, begging for someone to save them. The Council began their debates. Committees formed. Protocols were reviewed. The discussion would probably last for days. Admiral Hae-Jin, monitoring from her new command center on Earth, did not wait. She had been expecting this. The galaxy had learned about humanity, but they had not changed who they were. Plot a course to those coordinates, she ordered her new rapid response fleet. We have another SOS to answer. The fleet powered up and launched within hours. The ships were ready. The crews were trained. They knew what to do. Humanity had set a precedent. When someone called for help, they answered. No debates, no delays, just action. The galaxy would never be the same. And somewhere in the dark corners of space, predators watched and learned a new truth. Some prey had teeth. Some prey fought back, and some prey came from a world so dangerous that they had learned to be more terrifying than any predator. They called that world Earth, and they called its people Deathworlders. The Ravagers learned this lesson too late. Others would be smarter. They would avoid conflict with humans. They would think twice before attacking the weak, because now, when someone sent an SOS, there was a fleet ready to answer. A fleet that did not care about protocols or politics. A fleet that only cared about one thing: helping those who could not help themselves. The age of unanswered distress calls was over. Humanity had made sure of that.